Welcome everybody. In today's video, I'll walk you through the process of building a Smart on FHIR app that can seamlessly integrate EHR data with devices data such as CGM using MeldRx. I'll be using Epic as the example here for the EHR. The reason I'm using Epic is because Epic provides a sandbox that can be accessed both as a patient and a provider. So it gives us a very good way to view some scenarios in a real world. Before we hop into the demo, let me give you a quick overview of the scenario and what we will be doing. All EHRs today provide a FHIR API, which enables providers to access that data using Smart on FHIR apps. These apps can be standalone apps or EHR launch apps. On the patient side, there are numerous options available that allow patients to use apps to import their data from providers, payers, devices, or even manually. However, there isn't an easy way for these patients to share that data back into the EHR and making it accessible to those apps. We solve this by using linked workspace. A linked workspace is a FHIR server that acts as a proxy FHIR server in front of the EHR FHIR server. It allows apps to connect just as they would directly with the EHR or the Epic FHIR server in this case. However, it is not limited by what the EHR FHIR server can do and can be configured to support other scenarios. For example, it can allow patients to upload the data from their devices or other sources. This data is stored in a separate database within the linked FHIR server. The FHIR resources in this database are linked to the data in the EHR FHIR server in a way that any external app can access the combined data just like a smart app accessing any regular FHIR server. If it sounds complicated, don't worry. Let's just see all this in action. I am in the MeldRx developer account and I'm already signed in, and we're going to start by creating a workspace. So I'm going to create on the create workspace button. We're going to be creating a linked workspace, and we will be creating a linked workspace that is connected with Epic. So I'm just going to give it a name Epic. I will select from the FHIR API provider Epic, and I can basically add a URL here, FHIR API URL. I'm going to just select the sandbox in here, which we have preloaded the FHIR URL. So this is the URL of the Epic Sandbox server, and I'm going to click on the create workspace button. That has basically created the linked workspace that I'm going to be using for my testing, which is now connected to Epic FHIR server in the backend. The next step, I'm going to go ahead and create an app. I'll first create a provider app, and then I will create a patient app. So I'm going to go to the apps. I'm going to start with registering a new app. I will call this the provider app. We'll be selecting provider here. The authentication, we will be using public, and I'll be using the default scopes of profile ID and profile and open ID. And then I'm going to use launch patient, because we want to use it as both as a standalone as well as an EHR launch. And then I'm going to use patient star.read because we are only going to be reading data from this app from Epic. For the redirect URL, I'm going to put the redirect URL of an app that we will be using locally for testing. I will be going through this app in a minute, but this is an app where we have built a default patient and a provider app, and that is easy to use for testing. So I'm just going to copy the URL for that, and I'm going to add that URL in here, and then I'm going to click next. This is the step where we are going to link our app to another app that is registered in Epic to basically connect to the linked workspace. So when an external app will be connecting to the linked FHIR server, and when it needs to make calls to the Epic FHIR server, this linked app will be used behind the scenes. I'm just going to click on add linked app. I'm going to click again Epic, and you can go ahead and type in your client ID that you have registered with Epic, or you can borrow one that we have created and we have just added it in here. So I'm just going to type it a name, and then I'm going to select the same scopes, and these are the scopes that will be passed to Epic whenever I'm making a call to Epic. With that, I have created my app and I have created the linked app. I'm going to just click next. I don't need a workspace since we already created it, and I'm going to go ahead and complete that step to register my app. So at this point, I have created a linked workspace and I have created an app that I can use to connect it. As the next step, we are going to go into now our test app from where we will be launching this app as a provider to basically connect to Epic. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go to this particular app that is running locally on my machine. This app is also available as part of MeldRx. If I just refresh it, it will show me all the apps and the workspaces that are in my account. It just makes it easier to launch the Smart on FHIR launch from there. So I'm going to say that I'm going to select that workspace, and you can see this is a separate workspace that is created as a FHIR server that will actually be acting as a proxy to Epic. And then I'm going to click on that provider app. I'm going to select the scope of launch patient and patient start.read. I can select any other scopes if I need to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this launch URL because we will be coming back and doing multiple launches in here. And I'm just going to load it in an incognito browser. This will obviously just take me into the Epic provider screen. I'm going to log in as one of the providers, and anyone that has worked on a Smart on FHIR with Epic will be familiar with these screens. So I'm just going to select a particular patient, connect with that patient. This is a one-time process where it will ask me to just select an email because I'm logging in for the first time into the linked workspace. And after that step, what you are seeing right now is that this is basically a very simple app that is connecting to Epic, and it is pulling this data from Epic. So we see some observations that are already there, the conditions. This is pretty regular connecting to Epic stuff, so nothing new in here. Now what we are going to do is we are going to basically go and build a patient app, and using that patient app, we are going to share some data back to this linked FHIR server, and we should be able to see that data from this screen. So I'm going to go back into my registration screen in here, and I'm going to go back to apps, and I'm going to click on registering a new app. This time I'm going to be building a patient app. I'm going to select patient. We'll keep it public. We'll select the profile and the OpenID scope. We'll select the launch patient because we will be like not launching the application. We don't need an EHR launch. And I'm going to actually select patient star because this patient user will be able to post the bundles back to the linked FHIR server. I'm going to click on the redirect URL, and I'm going to paste the same URL because we will be using the same app. It can launch in both patient and provider modes, as we will see in a minute. I'm going to click next. Again, I'm going to add a linked app. I'm going to add a linked app to Epic. This time I will be actually adding an app that is registered as a patient app in Epic. MeldRx automatically detects that. So if you use our sample credentials, it will automatically add an app that we have registered as a patient app. You can go to Epic and register a separate app and just add it. I'm going to add the same scopes in there so that we can use it when we make those calls from the patient side. And I'm going to go ahead and complete that step. Click on next. We don't need a workspace, and we will complete that. So now I have basically a patient app that I have registered. I'm going to now log into Epic, log into the linked workspace using this particular patient app. So let me go back to my app launcher. So I'm going to just refresh it so that I can see the new app that I have created. And I'm going to say, I want to launch it as launch patient, and using the patient star.star, I'm going to copy the launch URL, and I'm going to open a new browser so that we can view it all together, where I am going to go log in to that. Now what you see in here is because I'm using a patient app, it is connecting to the same linked workspace, but this time it is going to log into my chart, which is the patient side of Epic. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as FHIR Camila. I'm going to go through the regular flow. It's only going to ask me the basic information because we just want this app to know the patient and then share the data. So I'm going to allow that. And after it has went through the consent, it will bring me to a screen that will allow me to now upload data back to that linked FHIR server. This is basically just a sample implementation. And the key thing here is that using that Smart on FHIR flow, we are actually pulling in the patient ID of that patient from that linked FHIR server, which is ultimately pulling it from the Epic FHIR server. This ID is available to this app now, which can use it to upload the data to the linked FHIR server. We have a number of features that you can do from here. So I could actually connect to another Epic FHIR server, any other FHIR API provider, or I can connect to a Medicare account. So you can basically pull your data from a provider, a payer, or from a device. So this is basically connecting to the Dexcom CGM, from where I can connect in and I can log in and I can straight away pull my data from there using the normal authorization. Now, what we want to do in here is we are not going to go through the flow, because we want to actually focus on how the data is loaded from here. In case of a CGM device, typically that data will not be in a FHIR format. So we obviously need to have some way to convert that data into a FHIR format. The app that is basically uploading it, whether it is the app from the device or it's an app that is being built specifically for that uploading purpose, can basically do that. There is a lot of work going on right now under an Argonaut project called Argonaut Project for CGM, right? This project is basically all about talking about how we can convert device data, especially CGM data, into the FHIR format. So what I have done is I've basically taken a sample from here that basically proposes what a typical CGM bundle would look like that could come from a device. So the scenario in here is that I have a patient account that is basically can connect to that device. It can pull the data from there. Somehow it will be converting that data into FHIR, and then we want to push that FHIR data back into that linked FHIR server for the provider to see together with the rest of the data. The key here will be is that this particular CGM data, the data that is coming from the device, will ultimately have a patient reference in there, and somehow this patient reference should be updated with the patient reference into the linked FHIR server that this is being pushed into, which will ultimately then make it available with the rest of the patient data in the FHIR server or any app that is connecting to it. So to make that really simple and to kind of connect it, what I have done in here is I've just built an upload bundle button in here. So I'm going to select that particular bundle that we have, and we are going to use that to basically test it. So I'm just going to select that particular bundle and I'm going to click on upload bundle. I'll give it a few seconds, and then I'm going to go back to our screen where we were looking at as the provider. And if I go in here and I refresh this, I should see that I have a lot of new data that just came in there, which is basically all that data that was uploaded by that patient. We are just showing the minimal in here, and I can go back into the actual, JSON files, and we'll do that in a second. But the main idea in here is that now you can see that the data from Epic, which was this original data, is being melded together with the data that came from the CGM device that was uploaded by the patient in the same screen. And you can also notice that it actually tells me that which data is coming from MeldRx versus the data that is not coming from there. And the way this happens is because we have a detailed provenance built into the system. So whatever app you are using, the app can actually make that decision what data to display and how to display that. In order to understand that more, what we can do is we actually have a way where we can explore all the data in here in an API way. So I'm just going to go to that API Explorer, and what this does is this opens like a postman that allows me to connect to my linked FHIR server and just issue queries to it. So I'm just going to say I want to do a search query, and this is very context sensitive, so it knows that which patient I have selected, which workspace I am connected to. And what I'm going to say is that I want to basically query for observations, and it is going to give me smart query parameters to say you probably want to query it by patient and the category of lab. These are that we have kind of coded in there based on some of the resources. So I will say, yeah, that's basically the query I want to make. And if I click search in here, what you will see is that I will get basically a number of resources back. But within those resources, so I have first all the resources that are coming from MeldRx, but there will be an embedded provenance document in here. So if I can just go back in here and go there. So there is a first provenance document that is telling me that these 8 resources are coming actually from MeldRx. And again, this can be adjusted in a number of different ways. But then if I go to the bottom, I will actually see that there is a second provenance resource that will actually tell that this data is coming from the original organization, which in this case is basically Epic. That gives me a very easy way to configure and see what I want to show in my app and what I want to basically display. Now, If there is a scenario where we don't want the data to be combined, or let's say tomorrow Epic starts supporting writing some of the data and we want to kind of adjust it, we have complete control in that linked workspace how we can adjust it. So if I go back and I go back into that workspace, I can actually go into the data rules section. This is where it is defined by default. How does the linked FHIR server, the proxy FHIR server, talk to the Epic FHIR server versus its own FHIR server? By default, all the resources are read from both the proxy server and the original server and combined, but the writing is only happening to the MeldRx server. I could very well go down into the observation here. So if I just scroll all the way down to observation, and what I can do is I can just say is that just start reading from external only for whatever reason we want to do that. And I don't want to basically show the MeldRx data. I could also do that if tomorrow Epic starts supporting writing it, or another EHR, I can start writing that data directly back into Epic, and I don't have to do this proxy thing only for this particular FHIR resource. Since I have changed the observation to external now, if I just go back into my API in here and I make the query, or I can actually just do it here too. If I just refresh it, you will see that the MeldRx data is again gone and it is only showing me that observation. I hope that gives a good overview of you can use MeldRx to combine devices or other data from patients along with EHR data in Smart on FHIR apps. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks again for watching.